Hello, my name is Brant Hunt. My channel simply is Discerning What is True. We're continuing to do another particular broadcast tonight. Tonight's book we're going to be dealing with is called Kabbalah and Exodus. The particular chapter is chapter 9 of this particular book. And what we're going to be doing is simply, this will be part of what we call in the book of the Bible, that is Exodus chapter 5 through 6. So I appreciate you being here. Today is the 11th day, January 2026. So we're going to begin to read here. I appreciate you being here. Thank you. First reaction, Exodus chapter 5 through 6. Legend tells us that when Moses and Aaron approached Pharaoh, it was on his birthday. Because of this, he was surrounded by all the vassal rulers of the world who had come to do him homage. Thus he was very surprised when he heard the two Hebrews had not brought him any gifts. Because of this, he made them wait upon his pleasure. Now, while the Talmud describes Pharaoh's palace as a fortress which none could enter, this was easily accomplished by Moses and Aaron with the help of the archangel Gabriel. After rejecting the pair, Pharaoh chastised his guards and set up others. But the same thing occurred. This time, when Moses raised his staff, the two ferocious lions at the court entrance welcomed the brothers, and it was recognized that the Hebrews were not ordinary people. Okay, that's interesting. Seen Kabbalistically, that is, this is a penetration of the body and lower psyche by the presence of spiritual knowledge. You see. All right. So again, you think this is a story. This is what you think is literal, but it's actually this is a spiritual information here. This is what it is. Kabbalistically, this is why he rejects them, so to speak, at first. And then he gets upset. He says, "Why did you delay these people?" You see. This is a penetration of the body and lower psyche by the presence of spiritual knowledge. All the normal physical and psychological patterns are overridden and baffled when preceded by a higher reality. In other words, it had never happened before within yourself. Now, when you never experience it, you see. This situation is beautifully illustrated in the legend, which describes how the court was so overawed by the strange light radiating from the Hebrews' countenance that the Egyptian scribes threw down their books and bow before a deeper truth. This is what's internally happened to you. You see, this is a beautiful picture. It takes someone who has the ability to think of it not in a logical sense or not even a realistic sense, but in a almost like a child. You see. However, Pharaoh was blind in his sensual vision, for when he was asked to release the Israelites that they might go out into the wilderness to sacrifice to the Lord, he asked, quote, what is the name of your God? What lands does he possess? What is his power? What victories has he won? End quote. This is the ego reducing everything to its own sensual experience. See, it's again, the narration here is that Pharaoh is representing the idea of the psychological ego. He's never encountered God. Okay, this is about what God is when he takes rest in your body, in your head. So he doesn't understand. You see, your body doesn't understand what's going on. It has no inkling of this because this never happened to you before. You see, if you had, if you had this before, it would have been no big deal. You see, but it wasn't a big deal because simply is again Pharaoh is representing the flesh, the physical, not the spiritual. And Moses and the Israelites are representing the spiritual, so to speak, here. You see? His footstool, his shield, the clouds, and lightning, his sword, that God created the universe and brought forth the spirits and souls and nourished and sustained all existence. Pharaoh answered that he had no need of God, that he had created himself, and he had possession of the Nile, which is the source of all life in Egypt. So it is with the body-centered person who cannot accept anything beyond the physical. This is why people don't understand the spiritual at all. This is because they don't have the imagination. You see, you have to have the, you can't be to the overdoneness of being in other words, you're split. You see, it needs to become the two become one. You see, and so the body-centered person is not going to understand this because they don't seek it out. All they see is what's in front of them with their own physical eyes. They do not see the spiritual. To such an egocentric individual, matter creates brain, and brain the mind over which his will rules. However, Pharaoh, being logical according to his literal understanding of everything, sets his scribes to comb the archives, just look back and see is there stuff has this happened somewhere else in our history? Is this something different? That is of the ordinary mind, to see if the name of the God of the Hebrews could be found. This action was observed by Moses to be futile, in a remark about, quote, seeking the living among the dead. You see, here's a situation often experienced by the spiritual oriented when confronted by the learned who seek authority in books and in other spirits. In other words, wait a minute. There has to be another reason for this. In other words, their idea simply is, well, this must have happened somewhere else, so this would be revealed in our books. You see, their books would give them that information. This had to have something about it. Tell me about it, scribes. Tell me that there's such a story as this in our history of Egypt. You see, and again, you have to understand Egypt is also, in reality, is a spiritual kingdom too. So, but this is being told by the Israelites, the Jews. You see. This remark of Moses on the limited intelligence of ego did not help to secure the Hebrews' request. Pharaoh instructed his officers to, quote, increase the workload of the Israelites and even deprive them of the materials for making bricks. So the ego's reaction to any threat to its authority. So this is how they level down. Okay, I'm gonna put up my fist now. I'm gonna fight you. You're gonna do what I tell you to say. You see. So as a reaction to any threat to its authority, conforms and desires to its fiery suppress the enslaved psyche. You see, I'm gonna hold this thing down. You see, understandable. The Israelites protested to Moses how even that small freedom they possessed was now reduced. Moses approached God with the question of why things were now even more difficult. And in brackets, he says, a situation not unknown at the beginning of spiritual work, in brackets. The answer came back in Exodus chapter 6:1. Quote, now shall I see what I will do to Pharaoh, or with a strong hand shall he send them away, end quote. That is the condition for a dynamic confrontation were being created, whereby the body's considerable power would be made to give the psyche its initial push towards the journey of the spirit. In other words, like I said, when I was early, the last broadcast I did, I say, to other Christians, you claim that there is a quote unquote the art, then prove it, okay? Because it isn't. It's a belief system. In your connotation, you say, oh, it's God did such and such. No. You prove it. You see. And they can't prove it. They can't find it. It just never existed. You see, it's allegory. You see, the Christians have taken everything from the Bible literally or historical, and that's why they say the earth's only 6,000 years old. You see, that's their big hypothesis. They're gonna, that's their proving ground, so to speak, because that's all they know. But they haven't encountered God. No one's encountered God, even they call themselves Christians, have never met God. So how would they know they're true? How would they know they're wrong, so to speak? Because they don't. It's the way how God, in his way of his majesty and glory, doesn't allow what I would call people who do not honor him, respect him, and seek him out. And so basically it's this. They are blind. They cannot see. Even though they think they see, they're blind to spiritual things. Even though they claim they have spiritual knowledge, as they would say, oh, look at our books, you see. In individual development, this situation frequently occurs in that the physical laziness and psychological inertia are overcome by the sheer unacceptable ability of a situation. Something has to be done to get out of a grinding routine or escape from daydreams of a better life. At this point of at this point of deepest despair of Israel, the Bible speaks again of the covenant with the three Pentateuchs, or patriarchs, as to say. Here, the scripture says that the soul triad, composed by Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, knows God by the name of El Shaddai. That is the Almighty God, but not by my name, Yahweh. End quote. The divine name given to Moses on the holy mountain established a direct connection between the children of Israel and the Creator. The implication of this is enormous on the individual level, in that if this special name is called upon in prayer, there the divine will holds direct converse. While out of this imminent contact between the individual and God comes the offer of redemption, continually repeated in the Bible. However, the habitual patterns of the people make for lethargic and disbelief, which is symbolized in the moral collapse of the Israelites at increased Egyptian pressure. You see. In other words, they don't know who they are in some ways, you see. A despairing Moses asks God, quote, how will Pharaoh grasp that which even the Israelites do not understand? In other words, he's supposedly outside of the realm of the quote-unquote people of Israel, you see. So we're stopped there at chapter 9. Very well done here. This guy's done really some deeper work here at Kabbalah, that is. What is Kabbalah way of looking at things? So again, this is fantastic, just reading this particular work. There are many works that he did. The particular publishing house was called Shambhala Publishers, I think it was, out of Boulder, Colorado, seeking out this book. But anyway, I will let you go. I appreciate you being here, and thank you for listening. Again, my channel is simply called Discerning What is True. And I wish you a good night. Again, today is the 11th day of January, 2026. Have a good night. You take care.